Welcome to Conversations with Creative Minds. We have been searching for the meaning of creativity and the role it plays in our daily life. People use creativity to express themselves in different ways, such as writing, painting, poetry, composing music, or innovating new products. Creative minds have never been more relevant than today because of the need to solve our society's dynamic and complex problems. Here with us today is Gary Goshgarian. Gary is a professor of English at Northeastern University, teaching courses in science and horror fiction. He writes under the pen name Gary Braver and is a best-selling and award-winning author of 8 critically acclaimed mysteries and medical thrillers, including Atlantis Fire, Elixir, Flashback, Gray Matter, Rough Beast, Skin Deep, The Stone Circle, and Tunnel Vision. He has also authored many popular college textbooks, such as The Contemporary Reader. Gary's latest work is co-authoring a book with best-selling author Tess Gerritsen, a mystery novel entitled Choose Me.
First of all, I have known Tess Gerritsen for 25 years, and we met at a cocktail party. Sometimes wonderful things happen at a cocktail party. And it was at the height of the Me Too movement, and a lot of famous people had been disgraced. It was all over the news, and more people being questioned. And even Matt Damon had been criticized because he said there's a whole spectrum of sexual abuse, from inappropriate kissing to violent rape. And so Tess said, why don't we write a book together about that looks at both sides of an illicit relationship? And I said, this is a great idea. And I suggested a university setting. We talked about possible settings. And I said the university setting would be a good one because a professor-student relationship, it's an old trope, but we can pour new wine into the old bottle. The particular, the uniqueness of the book is that I would write the male point of view chapters and Tess would write the female point of view chapters. I would write the point of view of the professor, Jack Dorian, English professor at a Boston University, and she'd write the point of view of Taryn Moore, who was the student, also the point of view of the female homicide detective, Frankie Loomis. And that was the concept. And I sent her a brief outline and the first chapter, and she responded with her chapters and was back and forth over 18-month period through emails. What we wanted to do was make this very realistic. We did not want to use stereotypes. She is not going to be a flaming Jezebel. She's not going to be the crazy woman in what was the Glenn Close movie with Michael Douglas, Fatal Attraction, and nor was he going to be exonerated or fully vilified. So in a sense, Choose Me is a portrait in grays, and it is in many ways a failings of 2 needy people. He needs passion because his wife is on a treadmill existence as a primary care physician, and she's needy because her boyfriend just left her, and her previous boyfriend just left her, and her father abandoned her when she was a child. So we have 2 needy people. So in a sense, there's a very realistic portrait of a train wreck. And it starts off with her death. Is it suicide or is it murder? And the rest of the book answers that question. What happened to her? How did this train get wrecked? And essentially, it is a warning. I mean, it's a dramatization of what could go wrong in an illicit relationship in the extreme. So in many ways, it creates a kind of moral and ethical issues that play out from beginning to end, and is a murder mystery at the same time. There is this culture problem, as you pointed out. I mean, just like today, I think some higher up in ABC had been, accused of sexual harassment from a couple of years ago. And it is a cultural thing, but I think the culture has changed so much since maybe 20 years ago. And the change, I think, has come in, and this is something we examined in the book. About 40 years ago, it began to change with the initiation of Title IX, which comes out of the Federal Department of Education. And the Federal Department of Education says that if a college or university in America wants to get any government funds for research, they have to guarantee that every student on campus will be free from discrimination, racial, ethnic, sexual preference, and of course, gender. And all of the others had been enforced and guaranteed, except gender. And it was only, I mean, there was still instructors, professors getting away with trading good grades for sex. And the fact that at Northeastern, where I teach, back in the early 90s, I think it was a history or sociology professor was in fact caught having a relationship with one of his own students over whom he had a supervisory control. He determined her grades. And the other students in the class realized that she was not an A student, but she was getting all the good grades, and eventually blew the whistle, and he was terminated. So in a sense, the kind of cultural change for defending females on college campuses has happened just really lately. And the whole Me Too movement is a climactic moment in the history of the culture that has not stopped. I mean, we're still seeing, like I said this morning or yesterday, that the hammer is coming down on men who have allegedly been violated, committed sexual abuse of women. So there is a cultural change, and it's continuing. So that is a new kind of cultural future involving the genders. I think for the enlightened people, they are going to, men are going to probably be more savvy about what exactly is a sexual offense. It's not every corner of American culture is going to change, or the world culture is going to change, but women have made it known that they're not going to stand for this anymore. And if you look at some of the old ads in magazines of women who were just essentially, major domos at home. They cooked and did this, and they satisfied their husband, both domestically and sexually. And men got away with stuff, touching and inappropriate kissing and all that. That doesn't happen anymore. In fact, the ads show some really aggressive males on females in magazines, make your husband happy kind of thing, and wearing scanty clothing. That isn't going to happen anymore. You don't see that anymore. And so I think where we're going is that men would be punished for abuse. And now the law is part of that. So that makes it all the more evident. I think so, because I've read many of we've had like 21,000 reviews on Amazon. I mean, it's astounding. And many people really do see, not that this is a turning point, but this does capture stupid acts, and captures people who are caught in those dumb acts, crossing the line. And in the case of Jack Dorian, the professor, this is the most challenging part of writing his character. He is smitten with guilt and regret. And the two most important things in his life, his marriage and his career, are shaken, and they are threatened. And he could lose his wife, and he could lose teaching forever. And once you have, as a professor, been accused of sexual harassment, you're never going to be hired again. I mean, so you get a job at something else. And so I think that this does look forward to, this does inform the readers, and the readers responded well, that these are the dangers if you cross the line. And I think that, that was very gratifying to see these reviews. Yeah, I think women have made it clear what they won't stand for. And you don't have to be a card carrying feminist. Many women have become feminists, involuntarily, unofficially, because this is a feminist issue. Since the early 70s, they've been saying, stop doing this, stop treating objectifying us, stop treating us as sex objects. And men kept on doing it. I mean, look at the number of heads that rolled 3 years ago. CEOs, movie producers, some, television celebrities, some of the biggies on television did not have their wrists slapped. They were terminated, and they're living miserably now in the shadows and suffering for it. So I think that there are changes, and I think that women, the voices of women, have made this turn around, and it started with women's basketball back 40 years ago. It took a long time, but the Me Too movement really accelerated things. I think that I'm not familiar with the movie, but I know of it, and I think that yes, I think you start watching series television or a series television and movies, I think you're going to see changes. I mean, women are given equal respectability, and empowered positions. I mean, there are several female detective shows on television, with all sorts of channels, all sorts of cables. The publishing industry, excuse me, likes strong, assertive women as protagonists for crime novels. In fact, that was one of the reasons why in Choose Me, we introduced originally, this was a chronologically written novel, where the female homicide detective, Frankie Loomis, comes in like in chapter 20 or 25. The editor said, we love this character, move her up front. So what we did was we moved Frankie right up to the death scene of the student while she's investigating it. And because they really loved this character, this savvy, middle-aged mother of challenging twin girls, that gave her female insight and motherly insight into the crime investigation. Excuse me. So, and given the fact that so many agents, editors, and publishers are female, and so many books, like 80% of the novels in America, are purchased by women, that made it clear that knowing your audience is the first step to appealing to your audience and getting successful books. So that's also working in Hollywood. So that is something I learned from this project with Tess Gerritsen. Publishing company likes really strong women who are not going to take any flack from men or abuse. So there are changes. Yeah, the future of the gender relationships isn't what it used to be. I think it's not just, I think it's holistic. It's not just being, having a high IQ. It's realizing that you should be treated equally with men on your level, particularly of employment. So it is emotionally empowering to see strong women and models for girls. So I think that is what is, it means physically too. That, I mean, you see the Olympics, how extraordinary women have performed in the Olympics in athletics, encouraging girls into athletics, which has been going on for the last 30, 40 years. But it really is an emotional state of mind. It's a sense of confidence and that you can do what men do. You don't have to be brilliant, but if you are, that certainly helps. And so I think that a strong woman is one who knows where she's walking when she walks and will not be dissuaded by what used to be a man's world, the glass ceiling and going through that, in fact. So I think that's the changes that we're seeing and we'll continue to see. I think that's happening. It's happening in academia. It's happening in and commercially throughout the world, the corporate world. It's happening in the sciences. I mean, there are very, very smart women running very smart organizations. The former president of Harvard was female. It's Faust. So we have women in very high positions, and I think men respect that. And I think men are starting to think that, there are equals. They are our equals in so many ways, if not better. It's in a sense, it's an intellectual liberation. I mean, as well as an emotional liberation for men. You realize that women can do what men do and might do it better. And I think there are, there are changes. There are men who have been awakened. Having laws against discrimination certainly help. That will make you realize that you can't get away with this anymore. And just as with, racism, there's sexism, and we now have laws that prevent that in certain areas, particularly academia. You get fired if you don't, if there's abuse. So I think that changes, and I think that the younger people who are empowered, recognize that. Younger men who are empowered recognize that.